All right, I think we are starting. I want to say welcome to the Color of Phantom Virtual Con. We have discussions from the Otherhood. So I think that is a podcast that you do. And we have a group of wonderful people who are going to talk about being blerds of a certain age. And so I'm Donna Eason, and I am the creator of Color of Fandom, along with another group of people. And what we do is we definitely focus on geekdom from a diversity standpoint and look at inclusion in terms of race, gender, sexual orientation, age, physical and mental ability, and any other areas where some people have felt marginalized in the geek community. We represent a safe and inclusive space. So we are just so thankful to have you all. And I have a short bio that I would like to read about the group and anything you all would like to contribute afterwards. And then I'll go ahead and mute my mic and then let you all take it from there. Discussions from the Otherhood is a weekly podcast on TalkShoe, where these blerds of a certain age discuss sci-fi, fantasy, and horror in media. Sonia James is a specialist in audio plays, radio broadcasting, who is expanding her expertise into podcasting. William Hayashi is a science fiction author and screenwriter whose novels, The Dark Side Trilogy, form the basis of an upcoming Netflix series. James Goodridge is an author and academician who writes and speaks on writing and horror. Penelope Flynn is an author and artist whose works are in the areas of science fiction, fantasy, and horror. She also is the head of Prolific Hybrid Multimedia. Otto is a social commentator and critic of sci-fi, fantasy, and horror film and TV. And Cranston Burney is an author of science fiction who also curates and edits anthologies for Prolific Hybrid Media. And so anything else you all would like to contribute would be so welcome in getting to know you all.
Tony, you muted?
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me good?
Yes.
All right, I'm Tony Cade. I am the owner of Challenges Games and Comics. I've been doing this since 1994. And before that, I was actually a staff photographer for Dragon Con here in Atlanta and also the Atlanta Fantasy Fair. And I also did a community access TV show called Sci-Fi Atlanta. More recently and stuff, I've been editor-in-chief and founder of Terminus Media, which is producing comics and animations for corporations and government agencies. And also, I was the head of the Atlanta Sci-Fi and Fantasy Expo, which was a free convention here in Atlanta that basically had like 60 hours worth of programming and usually over like 50 plus vendors.
Cool. All right. Thank you. All right. Well, Donna, if you have anything else to say, then we can go ahead and get started. All right. The vast majority of us here are members of Discussions from the Otherhood, which is a podcast on Other Side 5, which is our website. We are on TalkShoe Saturday nights, like tonight, and generally we talk about anything regarding science fiction, fantasy, horror, speculative fiction, in mass media, any type of media, but generally related to people who are, I guess, ethnic minorities, sex, race, gender, whatever it is that's related to that as we deal with issues in the media, but from the perspective of those of us who are blerds of a certain age, because I think our age gives us a little bit of perspective. One of the things we discussed, I think the last time we were here, is just that concept of being a blerd. And what is that? It's a Black nerd. And, basically all that kind of is attached to that, of being a nerd and being Black. We have had discussions in the past, and I guess the floor is open for everybody to kind of discuss whether you think that there is a difference between being a nerd and being a person who's Black and is a nerd, whether or not that occupies a different special space. William?
Well, as you were talking, I was thinking of even the definition or claiming, the space of being a nerd. Mm-hmm. I mean, because with us being predominantly Black or Japanese Negro nerds, in my case, I don't always identify by race. And there are times when people who know me or know my work would make an assumption about my craft or my art or whatever I generate based upon a race-based moniker. So when I forget, I'm very comfortable. When I remember, I'm very comfortable. So I think I look toward the identity of being, for this case, a nerd or a blerd, because that's the delineation of the group. But I'm not always so seated in it that that's all I think about. And on of a group, to look at other groups as monoliths, and there's a certain amount of nature it does to make unwarranted assumptions that not only don't really fit, but they're off-putting, kind of an aside.
Right.
That's my lead-in for this.
Okay. Right. And Sonia, do you have a different perspective?
I came from the perspective that I was an other when I first realized I was a blerd, because I came from the North and a conservative group down to the South, which was trying to be more progressive than the little group that I was a part of in the North. And the clash of cultures took me by such a surprise that I fully retreated into my nerdiness. Wow. And was ostracized from the Black community for it. So I had that misfortune of being labeled white when I was just trying to be myself. And it wasn't until I got into college where I fully embraced my nerdness and my Blackness, because they both came in handy for student government work.
Right. And Tony, do you have a perspective?
I don't really know if I had a perspective. I've kind of like been who I am and stuff from like an early age. I got exposed to playing chess back when I was 9 years old, and I got pretty much into comics about the same age. So I just knew that I enjoyed reading comics. I enjoyed playing strategy games at an early age, and being pretty much like living in the hood most of the time and stuff, I could still get out there, play basketball, play football, do all the sports that everybody else was doing. But I still have my love of things that were like sci-fi. I used to love like the reruns of Star Trek. I used to love I really got into my Saturday morning cartoons. So I pretty much been into what I'm into and didn't really care what anybody else was doing, because I guess it was one of those things where I could be into everything that everyone else was into, and into like the things that were considered nerdy and sci-fi. I used to look forward to watching the Incredible Hulk and Wonder Woman and Shazam TV shows back in the day.
Are you from a large family, small family?
I'm pretty much like a small family and stuff. It was pretty much, my mom just had like me and my sister, and like I said, when, my parents, divorced, went out to go live with grandma for a little while and stuff out in California. And I always like to consider California like, my formative years, and I kind of like just exposed me to like even more things, and, more people who were interested into, comics and, playing strategy games, and that was my first time and stuff getting exposed, to different things. But strangely enough, it was like the 80s in high school in a chess tournament, and we were playing another school. I went to like East Atlanta High School, basically like we're a 99% Black high school, and we had a chess team, and I played first board. and we went and played a game against a school called Parkview, and we beat them in the chess match. And then afterwards, the guys came over to us and like congratulating us, for our victory, and was like, "Well, hey guys, do you guys play Dungeons and Dragons?" And we're all like looking at each other, like, we were in the comic books and we played chess. We were like, "What's this Dungeons and Dragons?" And then the guy invited us over to his home and taught us how to play Dungeons and Dragons, and that's when we realized there was a whole different side of nerdom that we knew nothing about, and it was on from there.
Otto, do you have a similar or different perspective or experience?
Well, so why do we need this word blurred? Why do we need it? I don't understand what. I mean,
But first I want to know what your experience is.
My experience?
Growing up being a what we've come now to associate with being a Black nerd or blurred.
Well, I refuse that label, so I'm not.
Well, before I'm going to ask you about your label. You listen carefully to the question. Don't make me interrogate you. Listen carefully to the question. I'm asking you, what were your experiences growing up being Black and a nerd?
Well, I refuse the label of nerd.
Okay, go on.
I was Black. I did grow up. I was Black.
Mm-hmm.
I did all the things that Black people do.
Mm-hmm.
And seems like being a nerd in the Black community is doing things that Black people don't do. Like, playing chess or running for student government or writing or reading a whole lot of books seems to be anti-Black. So is that what a blurred is? I don't know. I did all that stuff and other stuff too, just like the previous speaker said, into sports, was a jock and all that. So that's pretty much my experience. I never was ridiculed or anything for it because the people I ran with was diverse. So it's ran with the smart kids, ran with the dumb kids, ran with the athletic kids and popular kids and the not so popular. So I'm interested in hearing everyone else's definition and experiences.
Right. Well, I mean, those of us who are in the discussions with the others that already know my background is that, I come from a family, all girls, 5 of us. We were all into horror, science fiction, and we're all very close in age. So for us, or especially for me, I didn't rely too much on what other people thought or how they dealt with whether or not I was, a nerd or not, because, we were just our own tribe and we did all those things. My parents watched science fiction. My grandfather watched science fiction. So, we were all, always, in that space, and it never felt strange or odd for us. I mean, we were always just that way. We read constantly. We like to read, the ghost stories and the, again, the science fiction, the fantasy stories, we all read those growing up. So for us, this space that, people consider a blurred space, a lot of people who had issues with it, we never did because, we were all, that's just the way we grew up. And because there were 5 of us, so many of us, it just didn't ever seem like it was strange or other, we were, everything else outside of us was outside. We were the rule. Everything else beyond us was the exception. So I never had that sense of an outsider, except when we went to school. Sometimes you have people, they start their, the way you talk, and we speak the way we spoke, because that's just the way we speak. And of course, you have those minutes of me, as I say, I don't know any of us, well, no, many of us who have not gone through life, getting the moniker of the sandwich cookie at some point. But, I never, never got too much to me. But with you, Otto, like you're saying that you kind of eschew the moniker of blurred or Black nerd. Why do those terms why are they off-putting to you?
Well, I don't know if the word nerd was defined, number one, and why is it that anytime a Black person does it, it has to be like a Black version of something. So it's like a Black fill in the blank. You know, it's like the
Okay, I want to stop you there. Let's back up. Now you say that it wasn't defined. So that if it's not defined, then why does it chafe you so much? Why don't you tell us what is you think it is, or your definition of it is, and then we can go from there. So why it is that you feel that it is pejorative?
well, you know, for my purposes, nerd is like the word they use on the Happy Days. You know, it's like it was a pejorative, and I don't think it meant smart or anything like that. It's like meant someone who was like socially uncomfortable or socially inept on that show. And then of course you have Steve Urkel, who is I guess kind of considered a Black nerd or a blurred. No one wants to be any of that. So it turned into it morphed. The word nerd morphed into something like someone who is Bill Gates or something like that. So it's changed over time. I think what it means now is someone that's into all the things that people have talked about, you know, sci-fi and all that, and intellectual pursuits.
Mm-hmm.
So it's changed a bit, quite a bit. But you know, why do we need a Black version of that word? You know, are we communicating to other people that, you know, we're talking about Black, that we're Black? Are we waiting until they see us, or they read our writing, or why exactly do we need to give everybody a heads up that, you know, we're Black?
Well, I see it. I understand what you're saying. I don't completely disagree at all, but there are certain components of our culture that are different from mainstream. And sometimes when you delineate someone as being, for example, a Black nerd, you could be conveying context, information, and what kind of cultural space they come from, just as additional information, and not derogating or uplifting or anything like that. Because there are a lot of things that Black folks do that are different, that are different from mainstream culture, from white folks. You know, the way we engage in our sports is largely different. You know, the kinds of identities we prefer. So I see it more as an information thing, not necessarily that pejorative. But I do understand what you're saying when you talk about how it can paint somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even painting them into a corner that they don't necessarily inhabit, because culturally they see the acculturation of Black as different, but without negative context.
Yeah, you know, and you say that it reminds me of a thing that happened to me. We talked about this, I guess, a while back at, I think, what is it, one of the cons, and I was involved in it, and somebody didn't show up, and they had to replace them with other people. And so my writing, it's you know, it's basically horror, but with science fiction and fantasy kind of all merged into it, and you know, adult targeted. But it wasn't that kept me from being able to fill that spot, because it said it was filled by people who had, was it own voices is the term they used, and I'm kind of like, okay. But if you read the story, you know, my story is, you know, it is allegory and having very much to do about the Black experience. You know, it's about Renfields, who are vampire and human hybrids, basically an allegory of the African American person as an African and European type hybridized individual, you know, and you know, this takes place in the past and then moving forward into the future. But I think that the presumption that's something we write, because it's not like, you know, on the nose, that I'm not writing about Pecola Breedlove, in the bluest eye, that somehow what I'm writing is not
Yeah, what does
own
that even
voices.
mean?
It is
Yeah, what is that?
presumptuous and
Own voices.
offensive.
What does that mean? Like you're a ventriloquist dummy or something? Somebody sticking a hand in your. That's
Well, no,
labels,
but it's
labels,
presumptuous.
labels, man.
Yeah, it's labels. It's presumptuous as to what it is that Black voices are. You know, I guess if I was writing and I was, I said like Maya Angelou or something, then I would be own voices and I would be okay to put on program. But because, my writing, because it is, because I mean, I am Black, so if I'm writing it, it's my own voice, I'm writing it, it's, my voice.
But maybe you should
And
do a vampire version of Why the Caged Bird Sings. Why the
yeah, but
caged Frankenstein monster sings or something.
so I think that's an issue, and that's what this kind of comes to, the concept of, is this saying that we are Blerds, is it as limiting as it is liberating? I like the moniker in some sense, because yeah, it's all right, because we're saying it is all right to be Black. It is all right to be nerd in the context. I mean, define context of being that you are smart, that you're into comic books, or that you are into classical music or some strange electronica stuff. Whatever it is that's out there that people think, as Otto put it very succinctly, things that Black people don't do, that you do those things and you're all right with it. So I think that concept of being a Blerd, I think it's very liberating, and I think it's
the question
good.
is this:
Mhm.
if you're an anti-technology person, you're a Luddite.
Yes,
And so if you're a Black person, you're a Black Luddite?
a Bloodite.
A Bloodite? Come
I'm
on.
just kidding.
Who are we talking? When we use these terms, who are we talking to? Are we talking to white people? Are we talking to each other? Are we giving each other like the secret handshake? What is it
No,
that we're
no,
doing?
it's like I said. What it does is it gives additional context so people understand. I would say understand better than a 30-minute intro conversation about what the damn word means. We can understand, or we can guess at certain meanings by the use of the words as a shorthand. It may not be perfect. It may not even be right, but it gives some context so people have some place to place their feet when they start to when they try to understand who we are, or how they're describing the group, or what the core subject matter is going to be discussed. I think it's just shorthand, and it's not always accurate shorthand. So you're right, Otto. You can't use it as an identity because it's often incomplete. It's
Right. So
often
people say,
accurate.
these are these are Black nerds. So as opposed, when I read your stuff, I say, oh, William is a Blerd, so he's a Black nerd. So that definition, I expect certain things like talking about urbanization things, or I'm talking about, they're going to use the word ghetto a lot, or what exactly, if I'm a person new to the space, what exactly what should I expect? Am I reading a piece or a book written by Blerd, or having a
Well,
conversation with a
Can I,
Blerd?
can I jump in here? Can I jump in
I
here?
was gonna say if you jump on it, I saw you had your hand up.
All right, look. All right, for me, the whole thing about Blerd and using the term Blerd is to let people know that you are a member and it's a community. Okay, it's basically, it's like, okay, this is a Blerd event. Sorry, so you can go to this event, and there's a very good chance with you attending this event, there's a Blerd event, that you will find people there that you have a common background with. You will have people and stuff that know what it's like to grow up Black. And you also will have a setup where you will know that there will be people there that might have interest in comic books, sci-fi, horror. You can talk about, the Marvel TV shows before they were popular and everybody got into them. You know, you might be able to talk about the history of the X-Men and be conversing with people who know more about X-Men than what they saw watching some movie. Okay, so to me, the whole thing about Blerd is to basically, you know, show that this is somebody that you have probably some common interest with, and that's a positive thing. So I've got no problem and stuff, you know, with the, you know, the term blurred, or, you know, people using the term blurred, especially to designate groups. Like there's a convention called BlerdCon. Okay, anybody can go to that convention, all right, but you know from the name of it that there will be Black people there, and there will be Black people there that are into sci-fi, horror, American pop culture, you know, and that's a good thing. All right, so you know that if you go to this event, you will be around your people. So that's why I don't have a problem with the term blurred and people using the term blurred. You know, like I said, you know, I'm one of those people and stuff. Like I said, I was very diverse. You know, I played sports in school too, you know, and I remember sitting there and like, you know, study hall and stuff, finish my work. I'm reading a comic book. And, you know, the football player will come by and stuff and, you know, and be like, oh, look at the little baby reading a comic book. And I was a smart ass. I'd be like, what's that word? You know, and then, you know, after he couldn't answer the question, he'd walk away and everybody would laugh at him, you know? So, you know, my whole thing is and stuff is that something like blurred is only a negative if you let it be a negative. There's a whole lot of other words that I got problems with that, you know, some people in our community use that I got a whole lot more of a problem with than I would ever have with the term blurred.
Now, with
But who
regard
are we
to
talking to when we use the word? Who are we talking to? I mean, are we
Well, I
talking
think
to each
that,
other? We
yeah,
talking
I
to
think it's both.
white people?
I think it's
I
both.
just mentioned,
I think
you
it's
see, you keep
both.
going into the whole white people thing. I'm like, all right, are they part of the community and stuff that has a similar background to you? Okay, you know, like I said, it's about, okay, it's about a social group you see online. It's about use into like a convention you might go into. You know,
Yeah,
it's basically to let you know that there are people there that have similar backgrounds to you.
right? But not
It's-
just that. I think it is a cute, it's not just the Black people. I think it's anyone. I think anyone who goes into a space and has to have an understanding that as Black people, we see the world through a prism of our being Black, that we see the world in a way sometimes that is different. You know, I mean, I was a smart kid, you know, I was a good kid, but that didn't mean that, you know, when I walk down the street and I see, you know, police officers, you know, looking really aggressive, that it doesn't scare me, you know, because I know what happens to Black people sometimes, you know, so I can't, you know, act as if I don't live in the space that is created by the skin I'm in. So when people come to something, you know, an organization, an event that you say it is Blerds or Black people are in it, we presume because they are Blerds, that you may see the world, the stories, the way that things are explained through a different perspective than, you know, as we would say, the general larger community. So, you know, I don't think it's a negative or a positive. I think it's not just for Black people. I think it's for anyone to understand that you are coming into a space or a mindset with people who may not see the world exactly the same as you do because of the fact, you know, of our culture and the fact of how people who are members of our ethnic group have been treated. So it may be different. We may, even like when you read a story, I focus on one character as being the good guy who may, to the larger culture, may not necessarily be a good guy, they may be a bad guy, but I can identify that this person has been maltreated or a person who has got to, you know, wait for a very long time and they maybe don't jump out like people think they should and go, you know, go out there and go get them, champ. So no, because when I jump out there and go get them, things generally happen to people that look like me when we just jump out there and do things. We have to be more reserved or do things more quietly, you know, and that may not be as heroic, you know, as other people may see it, but we understand those people to have done something that is heroic where other people may not. So I think that is the prism of, you know, cultural influence is different. So yeah, I think it's not just a thing that's to be said, a word used to by us, for us. I think it's certainly used by us, but to identify the type of mindset of this space that people are getting ready to come into when it's filled with people who are Blerds or people who
Now,
are self-identifying.
I know I am not on y'all's panel. Is it okay if I
Someone's
just,
Oh, please,
knocking
come
at
on
my
in,
door. I'll
please.
be right back.
okay, because I just really enjoyed this part of the conversation because I think I agree wholeheartedly with Tony on the idea of community, because in my experience, and I grew up with a whole bunch of siblings also, but I was the only one of my siblings that loved these, speculative fiction as much. My mother liked sci-fi a lot, but growing up, I was a big horror fan. And so the thing was, the devil is gonna get you if you read all this horror. I grew up in the South.
Yep.
But having a community, it was when I created Color of Fandom, the reason was when I first started really trying to get into geek groups, the ones I would go to, I would be the only Black person. I might be the only woman. I'm the only one interested in some of the topics that dealt with diversity and inclusion. And so I had to make a community, and I'm sort of like a pack person. I like a group. And then to have a label to me for the group, I also agree with William with the shorthand. Saying this, I say it to everybody because when I say it to Black people, they understand what that means. If I say it to white people, they usually understand what it means. And then just like you were talking about with BlerdCon, because I love BlerdCon. As soon as I started going to that, I was like, I don't know how many other conventions I'm really going to want to go to because it feels like family. And I think just being a part of a group, and it has a label to it that to me, it makes it easily identifiable for me, but also for other people. I don't have a problem with the label. I can understand though how there could be negative connotations also. But to me, it has been nothing but positivity in finding home. I guess that's how it's felt for me.
Absolutely.
I remember, I remember when I first started going to cons, I was one of 4 Black women attending the entire con of over 1,000 people.
Wow.
And it was my mother, a writer's, at one particular con, it was a writer's a wife and another Black woman. Because of that, because I was identified as the Blerd in the con, Neil Gaiman remembered me 3 months later at a completely predominantly white convention, much to the surprise of everybody. And he whispered in, "You're my Blerd, aren't you?" "Yes, sir, I'm your Blerd in this instance," because we sat down and we talked. So he knew that we had met before. So in that instance, it was my badge of honor. However, I go to my high school in a predominantly white school in the South, and it was turned into the negative because the Black community there didn't have the similar exposure. And the white community was a year behind. They were just beginning to learn about Neil Gaiman. So I've experienced both ends of the spectrum on the community and the ostracization. So for me, it was finding somebody, in this case, it happened to be Tony because he was one of the first Black people at a convention I met, finding people that I could shorthand with and I could just be, instead of trying to put on the performance of being the nerd who knows. At the time it was Star Trek. No, I knew that Uhura had a first name even before they canonized it into film, because I had sat and talked with her. She gave the name first initially. So I see both cases, but for me, it was that little harbor where I could drop all my masks and just be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I don't understand. Why couldn't you just be a nerd when you met Gaiman? Why do you have to be a Black nerd? It's like Trump saying, "Oh, there's my Black Republican." It's like, what? Why
But
can't
you
you
can't
just?
deny your skin color.
I know that, but it's like you're still a human, right? You're still, as I said, if you were, I'm not trying to say negative, but if you were a Luddite or a technocrat, no one would say that you're a Black technocrat or a Black Luddite. Who exactly are we giving the high sign to? And I have to say, as a former jock as well, is that it's exclusionary. The way the word nerd has been used Now
Mm.
it's almost to, you have to have a certain IQ, right, in order to belong to this group. So it's like if I'm a jock and I'm considered a meathead jock, and I'm interested in Spider-Man and all that sci-fi stuff, am I excluded because I don't have an IQ that levels up to what I think nerds or blurs are supposed to be?
Well, as somebody who's into sports, and I watch a lot of sports programming, they make very big deals about the football players that went to Ivy League schools and the ones who attended, the ACC schools that are known for academics like Georgia Tech and Duke. So, it gets pointed out, even, in sports, when you are supposed to be like very intelligent and, how, getting drafted by this team might be a plus because this team runs really complex plays. So, you can't even separate the stuff away from, even sports, that you can be a jock, but then you get special credit for being a highly intelligent jock.
I remember at FSU, I cannot remember the gentleman's name right now, when FSU won the national championship, their GPA was boosted by the football player who happened to have a over 4.0 GPA. And I remember that he himself identified as the blurred of the football team. He goes, yeah, I'm the one responsible for raising their GPA. What of it? Type thing. And we sat down and we talked during the football game, we sat down and we talked about Star Trek and Star Wars.
What, he wasn't paying attention to the game? The hell's wrong with him?
He only paid attention to when his side was, offense or defense was on, but
Wow.
and it was also during halftime. So we'll give him
Okay.
that.
All right.
All right,
Okay.
halftime.
Okay. All right.
Cool.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
But that kind of identification is when I came to realize, hey, it's okay to be the blurred because I'm also helping to raise the GPA of what my group and helping to raise the knowledge level and the diverse thinking of that group.
But it's the special words thing. It's like blurs of a certain age. We all know what that means. Like we talking about
Mhm.
old people. So it's instead of saying old black nerds, old people of a certain age. Come
That's
on,
because
man.
that
Thank you
title-
very much. It was my title, and you do
I
have
am
to live
so
with me,
sorry.
so be
I
careful.
was going to say that was taken by another podcast group, so she had to change it.
Yeah, I am so sorry. I had no idea we were talking about older nerds. I'll just wait for the regular group I'm in, and I'll leave you guys here. You old ass folks.
I do have a question for you all because I know you've been talking about nerd and relating it to smartness, which I know that used to be a connotation. Do you all see a change? Like, for instance, we use geek a whole lot more than probably, and it seems to not be any correlation between being smart. It's just related to you like fantasy, horror, and sci-fi,
But see, that's you're talking about, like Otto was saying. He's saying that his understanding of nerd originally is that you're socially awkward. That had nothing to do with being smart. And I do recall, like when I was young, geek were the people who were the technocrats. The people who are into the computers. Those kids are go spend all their time out, with that.
building their own TVs and
yeah, really, stuff like that. So those are,
remember
like you're saying, it's kind of
Revenge of the
blurred
Nerds?
in.
Yeah, for us, the socially awkward were dorks.
Okay,
So
all
dorks
right.
were socially awkward. Geeks were sort of like you tackle. Nerds were probably the smart. Yeah.
See, socially
were
awkward
dorks
was a
too.
dork.
You're right.
But you're Southern too. I'm a Southerner as well. But for us, a dork was like, it's like only 2 letters off from being what you really want to call them. So that's for us what a dork was. The same thing as being, the guys are real, so for us, that's what it meant. But I could see, we could also lean into the being awkward too, the social awkward. But it's kind of wild how these words have morphed over time. Kind of blend in and they pull out.
The interesting thing is, this is obvious because we've rotated several times through for nerds being the what the geeks were and everything. And this constantly shows how the language and context is constantly rotating.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't sit still for long. So yeah, it's hey, I'm just happy to, you know, for discussion's sake, for group's sake, for convention's sake, for things like that, you know, to go along with what the general common definition of the word for that day is, because over the years they change, you know, and sometimes even shorter than years. You know, somebody may, like if there's like what Sonia was talking about, when you have a convention or a classification where you have some overlap of a group, but only the first group that called itself that gets to use the word,
Yeah.
you know, and then you have to find another term
Yeah.
that's congruent to even what the first group was, but actually defines the second group, or at least headlines the second group.
Absolutely.
Well, anyway, shall we talk about stuff that we normally talk about as Black nerds?
I was gonna say, I think Tony hit it right. When Revenge of the Nerds came out, everybody kind of got lumped in together. All the geeks, blerds, and dorks got lumped in together.
Yes.
And the Black fraternity adopting the nerds in that movie helped, because it made everybody else realize, oh, we're kind of all in this together.
No,
So-
that's not what it was. They scared the hell out of the white folks into leaving them alone. That's what it was.
Yeah, pretty much, man. That's because that black fraternities we're not considering themselves nerds, geeks, or any of that stuff at all.
Well, no, they're considered professional. They're considered.
They're the cool
Yeah,
kids.
yes.
So, yeah, they're not that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those professionals are now the ones turning to the nerds and all the others, because so much technology and here we're on Zoom. We all are now on Zoom talking to each other, which makes us the nerds of the group, of the community at this moment. We are using the technology for being in different parts of the country and still talking together and forming a community.
Yeah. Yeah, but
Hey,
it's so interesting.
I have no
things like
problem
this
with the
for
whole thing
me-
with Blerds.
Yeah. well, see,
Again,
for me,
like I said, I spent the last 30 years creating Blerds.
Well, for me, it's like I think that this is all very normal. You know, I think that, you know, being on, you know, what other people think of as a cutting edge, I think this is where we should be. You know, when something happens, we should identify what the benefits are to it, whether or not we should, you know, be moving toward it or moving away from it, constantly watching to see how things metamorphose, and taking advantage of those things for the benefit, you know, of ourselves, all society, to move things forward. And I think that, I mean, well, I guess now that I've become older, I understand that that is not the way that everyone thinks. I grew up for most of the time thinking that's the way that everyone thought. And when it's a much older, and I look at the world and realize that everyone is not quite raised the way, and in fact, I mean, people who identify themselves as Blerds, a lot of us are raised in kind of the same social construct. And we are a lot of times very surprised when everyone else doesn't think the same way that we do. I mean, I grew up thinking, what's the most important thing? And it's truth. You know, you've got to tell the truth. You know, we're not allowed to tell lies. And it's not just because, you know, oh, don't tell lies or you're going to go to hell, because of course they say that. But you can't tell lies because other people can't make decisions because you have said something false. And your falsehood keeps people from being able to make proper decisions. So you shouldn't lie, no matter if it makes people feel bad. No, you should never lie, because people cannot make proper decisions when you tell them lies. So, I mean, for us, like, you know, you're not supposed to lie. And so when people in our lives, as we get older, our position is generally to believe what people say until we find out that they have lied. And a lot of times that's, you know, we're like in a horrible situation because it is our nature to believe what someone is saying because we believe everyone else has been brought up the same way, believing that you aren't telling lies. So, I mean, I think right now, especially during this last like political shift in this country, that's shocking to us that people lie. And I think also there's so many people that don't even look like us who've come up with that same mindset that someone has lied to them. They can't even tell they've been lied to because why would somebody lie? You know, because we brought up saying that this is just such a bizarre thing to tell a lie for no reason, you know, what we consider no reason. So I think a lot of us, especially those of us Southerners, have grown up with that. And a lot of Black people, I think, retain their Southernisms generations after they have left the South. So I think that's why a lot of us, you know, still maintain that type of point of view, so that when you are in a space with a lot of people who are Blerds, and we are writing things, we're writing about our characters, that there is always this sense of truth, and even if it's not going to turn out well, that concept of truth is like a thread that kind of goes through the things that we write about who it is that we are.
I just think we need to, I think we need to be careful with words sometimes and be cognizant of being ghettoized, you know, because you put Black in front of things and it turns into other things. You know, I mean, are we going to put all Tyler Perry and Martin Lawrence comedies, Eddie Murphy comedies? We're not going to call them comedies anymore. We call them blomedies or Tyler, Black dramas. So you can go that route, and I'm not trying
But that's
to
a
be
slippery
negative.
slope. But isn't that the slippery slope?
It could be a slippery slope argument, but you know that's what media does. You know, it turns your label around on you, and it uses it against you to a great extent. And I'm not trying to be negative about it, but I think we have to be cognizant about it because it could be used to beat you over the head with and beat you back into a category that you no longer want to belong.
Okay. You brought this up and stuff about the movies and everything, the TV shows. All right. Without it being called a blomedy or drama, or I don't even know how to put BL in front of drama. Okay. All right. There's already a thing and stuff that goes through like Hollywood and stuff for the longest, that if you had a Black star or a Black cast, that you wouldn't make the big international money, and that you basically only make your money and stuff from people in the Black neighborhood. Fortunately, luckily, that's been changed. Okay. So it was something that was basically in effect, whether or not you put, BL in front of it already, because of the people that were already in it. So I don't even see how that kind of like goes with the argument, because like I said, when you've got like a comedy and then it's a comedy full of Black people, it's still going to be considered a Black comedy. Okay. You don't have to put like, BL in front of it or anything. Everybody looks at it as like it's a Black comedy. It's not going to sell overseas. Or it's a Black action film. It's not going to sell overseas. Like I said, everybody was surprised how successful Black Panther was.
It's Blaction. It's a Blaction. It's a Blaction movie.
Well, the thing is, it's funny. So you say that about the Black comedy, that when our children were really small and we had taken them to their sitter, and she was saying that she'd gone out to this movie and it's supposed to be a Black comedy. There were no Black people in it at all. And so it's like, okay, no, it was a.
See, that was when it was supposed to be a Black man, a dark one. It was a dark comedy.
Yeah, she's a Black,
right.
That kind of Black comedy. I thought it was hilarious.
Right.
She didn't think it was funny because she wasted her money going to a Black comedy. It's like, there were just no Black people in this at all. So, and
like I said, Tyler Perry is like, okay, I'm sorry. If it's a Tyler Perry movie, you're only going to expect a certain amount of quality, and you're going to expect the people to look a certain way. Yeah. Okay. All right. It's a Tyler Perry comedy. You don't have to say it's a Black comedy. It's a Tyler Perry comedy. You're only going to get what you're going to get. Yeah. So like I said, that's why it's like being nitpicky about the word blurred. I just don't see the reason for it, because it doesn't really fit for like any other arguments. You know, it'd be different and stuff. You know, that's like us going back and forth about people using the N word and having a conversation with some rapper or some comedian about, oh, well, it's okay. We've taken back control of that word. All right. There's a lot of other words out there that we can be nitpicking about besides that one. And like William talked about before, how things change. If I mention to like a lot of people and stuff that there's a difference between the word prejudice and the word racist, they will look at me like a deer in headlights.
Yep.
Because to a lot of people, they're the same freaking word, which of course, if you look in the dictionary, they're not. Or if they always change the dictionaries, but usually they're two different things. So it's like I said, there's a whole lot of other words and stuff that we could be, complaining about, where it's like, blurred for me, it's just like a quick way. And as William said, shorthand is like, hey, these are people that can be in a community that I might be interested in.
I know we're looking at time kind of, eclipsing here. We're gonna have a few minutes. Does anybody have any questions for anybody on the panel, or they might make a statement or, express your opinion?
I actually have a question for all of you. When you go to conventions, what is your favorite thing to do or experience at conventions?
I like sitting on panels.
Yeah. Yep.
I absorb the knowledge from those panels.
Yes. I like the panels. I like doing panels. I like buying things. If I have money, to give me money, I like to buy things. But yeah, I enjoy being on panel. But the readings, I like to go listen to other people's readings. That's the other thing. When people are there, they have a book or something, they go to read it. I enjoy that. Listen to other people's readings.
Well, like I said, I've been going to like these big conventions and stuff since like the 80s. Of course, if I'm retailing at it, I want to make money. All right, selling my products. But most of the time and stuff, I used to like doing panels, and I used to love going to the parties, but now I actually kind of like, being behind the scenes and being backstage and like hanging out and actually getting to meet the guest and hang out with the guest. Like, for me and stuff, hanging out in the evening and stuff with like LeVar Burton, or hanging out with Nichelle Nichols, or, hanging out with, I can't think of the guy that played Dr. Smith, the original Dr. Smith in Lost in Space, Jonathan Harris.
Jonathan Harris.
Being able to like hang out with these people after hours, after the crowds have gone away, and actually talking to them in person, or, hanging out and stuff, and then they're sitting there talking to you about not the TV show, but like, well, hey, I was thinking about getting direct TV, do you have it? What do you think about it? Just hanging out with, the guest, after hours is to me like the most fun. Listening to like Peter David talk, till like 4 a.m. in the morning, that's the fun part for me.
I used to like that part too, until I found out that authors have groupies. So my focus has changed somewhat. Never mind. But it is partly true. I have to admit that there's more truth to that than I want to admit.
It's also
Hey, there's nothing wrong with groupies. They all can't, hang out with the author. So, somebody else has got to take up their time.
That's right.
It's also a great place to network and to meet other professionals or other people you aspire to be like. Like, I remember going to Dragon Con and taking a note of what Tom Savini was doing while he was at conventions. And I passed that knowledge on to a young lady who desperately wanted to get into special effects makeup. And she said, oh no, but I can't go to something like that because everybody will think I'm a nerd. You want the job or not?
Exactly.
This is where he's doing your interviews. If you want the job, you go to him.
Right.
And places like that, and making friends like the ones I've made here that are here on this panel. I've met all of them through conventions. I would not have these friendships if it was not for a convention. So it's also timed for a family reunion. I always go to conventions and think of them as a family reunion. And it's the friends, family I don't get to see like maybe once a year. And then we drive each other crazy for a weekend, and then we go away and then come back and drive each other crazy again the next year.
You know, you're right, because these last 2 years with, you know, the pandemic concerns and just about everything that was travel related or big group related closed down, I really miss those interactions. I miss going someplace and going, oh, you know, I'm going to get to see so and so and so and so that I haven't seen for, you know, since last year. So yeah, that's a big deal. That's a big part.
But looks like we're coming up on our ending time, but I was just wondering if you all wanted to promote anything, talk about what you're working on right now, anything that we can share with the group, with the con, that would be great.
Super.
I have one thing that I found out yesterday, if I could go first.
Yes.
Yesterday, I was sent the pilot script for the television show that they're going to make out of my Dark Side trilogy. And it was very good. It was much
Excellent.
better than anything I could have turned out on a TV script at this point. I think when I have more
Excellent.
experience, I'll be able to write that well. But oh my God, I couldn't believe this woman's writing.
Excellent.
So I'm excited about that now. It has renewed my excitement about my earlier works.
Good. I'm so glad. Great news. Well, I was going to say that tonight at 8 o'clock Central is Discussions from the Otherhood, our podcast, and we are on TalkShoe. And tonight we will be talking about cult of personality and profit in the creative industry. So if you would check in on us, that would be wonderful. You can find me at penelopeflynn.com. And that's where you find most of my stuff, or where I'll be. Anybody else? Tony?
I was gonna say I'll be behind the scenes with Tony and Penelope and some other folk, organizing future panels for other conventions.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I guess I can go and stuff. Like I said, as you can see here, this is not a screen. This is actually my store, Challenges, Games, and Comics. We're over in the gaming section. Over here and on the sides are our gaming tables. Around the corner, our comic books and anime products. We got a big gaming room back in the back. You can check us out at challengesgames.com. Also, if you're into like sci-fi, fantasy, and comic books, I just finished up the Fox Chronicles. You see right here. This is the comic book and stuff that I just finished up on Kickstarter. You can actually pick up issues. They're like, 30 plus pages, full color. This artwork that you're seeing is just as good as the artwork on the inside. You can get copies of it at challengesgames.com or just Google the Fox Chronicles comic, and you can order some there.
I didn't want to interrupt you, but there was a guy in a green sweatshirt, and I think he picked up a bunch of stuff and ran out the door.
Oh, trust me and stuff. I've been watching what's been going on and stuff. Like I said, I've got some staff and stuff here. As you were here, you saw me actually taking care of and servicing customers.
Tony, I was joking.
And he's got a big security camera in front of him that's been capturing the people walking by him, looking like, "Are you recording this?" Yes.
Another thing and stuff too is like, even though I'm old and fat, they still see a black man, so they're not sure that they can outrun me. So I usually don't have too many problems.
Oh man, the place looks nice. I hadn't seen it, from this angle. It's fairly large. It's a lot larger than I thought it was, Tony.
Oh, you're not even seeing a fraction of the store right now.
Man, that's pretty cool. I got to come down there and walk through there.
Oh yeah. The next time you're down for Dragon Con, come on through.
All right.
All right.
And I'll be making my debut and amateur night at the Apollo tonight. So keep your fingers crossed,
Quiet.
everyone.
Quiet.
Well, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna sing?
I'm gonna do a
dance?
comedy. I'm gonna do a comedy act and no slapping. No slapping.
Okay. All right.
All right, there you go. Had to get that in. All right.
Well, thank you all so much. I am going to, Penelope, I'm gonna pass this recording on to you, but we're also gonna post it in our Discord and also on our Facebook, if that's okay with you
Absolutely.
all.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Thank you.
wonderful. All right, well, y'all, and please, if you get a chance, join us in some of the other things we're doing this weekend. Penelope was with us last night. We had a little party in Gather Town and with some little avatars dancing. And tonight we're going to have a little party in Discord, which is more music and voice than anything. But some other panels, they're getting ready to show we're getting ready to do a Mystery Science Theater 3K of Ma. So we're gonna be talking through the whole movie.
Okay.
When are we
it's
gonna
like-
have real parties again, though? I just like get with people and drink and do stuff that can't be shown on Zoom or something, you know.
Well, I'm definitely going to BlurCon and DragonCon this year. So hopefully I'll see some of y'all at one of those. So.
All right.
All right. Well, y'all have a great evening. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.